Good morning, everyone. So this is Davina. I am interviewing Eric Peterson today, and I feel so honored. He's actually like one of my greatest friends from like back in the day. We grew up in the same area, this little town in Illinois. Him and my husband are actually like best friends. He was the best man at our wedding. But when I got on the venture I'm on now, just interviewing successful people and people who make like really big impacts, I immediately thought of him. He is somebody who is so involved in the community. He started his own nonprofit. He just, oh, he's an outstanding human being. He just is all about helping others, helping veterans, helping police officers. So I really wanted to talk to him specifically, hear his story. How did he do this? He is young. He's very young. He has a family. He was in the military, like I said, and a lot of young people that we hang out with, nobody else has done anything like this. So how did he create this? So I'm going to give him the floor. So Eric, if you could just tell us a little bit about you, and we really just want to hear your story. How did you create what you've created?
Yeah, absolutely. And first and foremost, again, thank you very much for just letting me be here. I would rather derail this and just tell stories about like you and your husband and I, like a decade ago, but for all intents and purposes. So my name's Eric Peterson. I started a nonprofit called Project Headspace and Timing. I started it unofficially in 2017, but officially on paper in 2019. I started it because a man that I was a medic to killed himself February 23rd of 2017. Just like you said, I deployed between 2008 2009 with the Illinois Army National Guard, where, as you know, I served with your husband in an infantry platoon, where I was a team leader and acting squad leader at times. After that deployment, I came back, became a paramedic in the civilian world. And I was just, while I did enjoy the people that I worked with and everything like that, I was just having a hard time being here. And it manifested in a lot of different ways. And I got an opportunity to go back overseas as a private military contractor because I had infantry experience and also paramedic license. So I went back over with the State Department, where I worked for a company called Triple Canopy, and I was in Baghdad. I did 2 rotations with TC, and then I did another 3 rotations in Afghanistan with a company that was subcontracted through the Department of Defense called Global, I think like Global Integrated Solutions, I think. And all of those jobs, I was essentially doing the same thing, similar to what I was doing in the military. I was doing security. It's just my role on the team changed in that with the State Department DOD, I functioned as a medic, and we were on teams that were constantly, rolling out and providing protection security for whoever we needed to. My wife, understandably so, she didn't want me to continue to deploy. So even though she kept telling me she wanted me to stay home, it was, as much as I love her, and I do love her very much, it was hard for me to meet her in the middle. It was hard for me to just do that and come home. So I ended up taking an executive protection job where I was doing security in New York. And now I wasn't overseas anymore, but I still wasn't home, right? And I did that for like a year. And my wife again was like, okay, can you please just find something where you're here? And so then I actually got a job as a private investigator. So I was like, okay, I'll stop that work. I'll be a PI, and then I should be able to be home more. And then as a PI, I found myself traveling 3 to 4 days out of the week, in an airport or something like that, because I was working cases all over the country. So, my wife and I could not see eye to eye. We were getting to a pretty tough spot because she wanted me to be home. She didn't understand why I didn't want to be home. And I didn't even understand why I didn't want to be home. Like, I love my wife, I love my family, I love my friends, phenomenal support system. I just didn't feel right being here. And so I was a PI in 2017, and a GoFundMe came across my Facebook page. and it had a familiar face on it. And that's always like, when you see something like that, like your heart drops, right? Because you're just like, okay, is it a sickness? Is it like, what's going on? And I saw that he'd killed himself. I mean, his name was John Kemper.
Wow.
And for the guys that knew him, and I'm not gonna make it sound like I was his best friend. I always feel like I need to stress that, because it's just like, I'm not trying to, I want to portray this very accurately. You know what I mean? Like, I was his medic. We were friends. Like, we played guitar together overseas a few times, and it just felt good to have moments like that with somebody when you're overseas, where you kind of don't feel like you're as far away from your loved ones as you are. But he was so positive, and he was like, every cliche that you'd ever heard about somebody that kills themselves, essentially, in my opinion, seemed to be true with him. He was a positive guy. He was so happy-go-lucky and everything like that, that I didn't trust him when he first got to contract, which kind of gives you some insight into my head, because he was like so positive. I was just like, but that's just the kind of guy he was. And so to see that he made that decision to do that, it
mind blowing. Yeah.
It messed me super bad. And so that put me into a weird place. I was having some issues of my own, because I'm sitting here trying to figure out, okay, what's my role here? What's my role in the civilian side of things? I knew who I was over there. I'm trying to figure out who I am back here. And then I see these types of things happen. And so I reached out to some of the guys that I'd served with John, and one of them made a recommendation to me, and he said, there's a book. It's by a war journalist named Sebastian Younger, and the book is called Tribe. And it talks about the issues that a lot of guys in the military have transitioning back to the civilian world. So I said, okay. I got that book. I read it. Phenomenal book. Wonderful book. I'd actually been honored to speak with Mr. Younger since then, because I talked to him. Yeah, because I talked to him about the impact that book had on me. Because in that book, he suggests having a town hall where you can share your emotional perspectives of war with the public. And I'm like, that's phenomenal. So I went to my village hall in Manteno, Illinois, and I asked them if I could do something like this. And they were so supportive. They were like, absolutely. You can take the room for free, like whatever you need. And that helped me out so much, because I was just like, okay, maybe this is the right thing to do. I was so vulnerable at that time, where like, if they would have really made it difficult, I don't know if I would have pursued it. I had no idea. But in doing that, we had some veterans come up and share their emotional perspectives of war. And one of them shared a really, really emotional story about what they'd been through. And he cried, which was beautiful, because he was able to get that out. You could tell he was carrying this burden on his shoulders. And after the event, his mother came up to me, and she was crying, and she gave me a huge hug. And she said, I didn't know what he'd been through, because I didn't know how to ask. And then he messaged me the next day, and he said that was the best night's sleep I'd gotten in forever. And then it clicked, like, because I believe that we have an insanely supportive community when it comes to the military, but sometimes they don't know how to show that support. And we have a lot of military guys, veterans, men and women, obviously, that need that support and don't know how to ask. So it was at that moment that I realized, okay, like, I got to do something with this. I got to continue to do this. I started volunteering more just at the veterans home, and I was just bringing beer out there and hanging out. Really, is what I was doing. It was the veterans out there having insane stories, so I really enjoyed hanging out with them. And I started getting other veterans together to do more things together, and from there we started linking up with other organizations, other businesses, and it just kind of grew and grew to being a nationally recognized nonprofit organization, which I'm very, very thankful for.
Wow. I love that. How long were you in the military?
National Guard, just my term was 6 years with like 2 years IRR. So I think 2005 to 2011. And then, yeah, State Department was like a year and a half, and DOD was roughly like a year and a half, give or take.
Wow. I love that. And then how has your upbringing affected you? Like, Did anything in your past, like, do you think affected you to get you to who you are today?
Well, I think it's fair to say that like everything in my
Mhm.
past got me to where I am today. You know, every meaningful conversation that I ever had with anybody that had served, or a family member or a friend of somebody that did. I also come from a interesting experience, in my opinion, in that, so race wise, okay, so I'm Asian. I'm half Asian. My mom's Filipino, my dad's Caucasian, but nobody's ever asked me if I was Caucasian, right?
Ah.
But so when I grew up, I was always, I feel like I grew up in a very diverse community,
Mhm.
and I moved from that community to another community out in Limestone, which was a great community, but it was predominantly Caucasian. And
Mm.
while I loved the school, loved the teachers, loved the people that I met out there, I always felt like a little different,
Mm.
just because I looked different and I didn't
Mhm.
understand that component of it. I've always kind of felt like I was on the outside, which I feel like has given me a different perspective on certain things, right? And growing up in a household, a biracial household where your mother is one race and your father's another race, gives you an interesting perspective on things, because you genuinely, from a very young age, believe that everybody just gets along. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yep.
then the military really helped reinforce that too, because in the
Mm.
military, you are with such a diverse group of people, and
Mhm.
you don't have the opportunity to say, well, I don't want you on my team. I want this guy on my team. And when
Yeah.
you get into the upper echelons, sure, you have those opportunities, but like as a grunt, you have who's around you, and you better figure it out. So I mean, those types of experiences throughout my life made me realize that I can't make excuses for
Mm.
why things aren't going the way that I hope they would. I just need to figure out what it is that needs to be fixed or worked on, and then come
Mhm.
at it from that perspective. So yeah, absolutely. I think we are a culmination of all the things that have ever happened to us, right?
Ah, love that answer. So it's this interview is really special to me, not because I mean I know you and I saw you when we were like younger, and I want to figure out the part when you like really knew who you were, because I remember you when we were young and you seem more shy and more reserved. You've always been funny, but you were not as vocal then as you are today. Like back then, you were a little more shy, a little more quiet, a little more reserved. And then somewhere along the line, I feel like you discovered who you were, and your voice just came out, and you're like a public speaker and you're confident and you know who you are. Like, was there a turning point somewhere in there that you just discovered, like, this is who I am and like I have a voice?
Can I just tell you, I'm super thankful that it comes off that way.
Yeah.
I,
And you're
I,
so funny. Like anybody who follows you on Facebook, like you post the funniest shit, like about your family, your daughters, your wife. It is so funny.
my therapist tells me, and it always makes me laugh. She just says, "You have a very busy mind," and I'm like, "That's a super nice way to put that," and I appreciate that. No, I'd always been very reserved and more quiet, and I'm glad that you said that, because my oldest daughter, she's very reserved and very quiet, and people will see her and be like, "Where does she get that from?" And I'm like, "That's me, 100%." And
Wow.
as far as like finding my voice, I definitely gained confidence, and I gained confidence through the things that I know that I've been through, that
Mm.
gives me the convictions and the confidence to talk about certain things. But
Mm.
I'm very much the same person. I deal with my own issues still, as far as like mental health, PTSD, all that other stuff, anxiety. When it comes to public speaking and things like that, it's very weird, because I am comfortable doing it,
Hmm.
because part of me doesn't care what people are going to think. Just
Oh,
part of me. I'm not going to be like 100% like I don't care what anyone think. Like
right.
that's not completely true, right? But I feel like I need to be able to have a genuine conversation about things, and I really need to speak from my heart and from my mind. And
Oh,
because I know what I'm saying comes from a good place, then I have the confidence to say it. And
mm,
because I know that there have been others who felt the same way and didn't feel like they could say it, and some of those guys ended up killing themselves. Some of those guys
yeah.
ended up developing all these other issues. I just realized, like, I have to get over whatever reservations I have when it comes to talking to other people. And I need to talk about what I'm very passionate about. And so I
Mm,
actually have, there's a poem by William Ernest Henley. It was written, like, I think in late 1800s, early 1900s. It's called Invictus. And I've read it so many times that I have it committed to memory. And if I am going to go do something and speak to a big group of people, and I'm like, I just need to give myself a little Eminem 8 Mile speech. You know what I mean? Like, I'll recite that poem to myself, and then I'll just kind of get my
get in the
balance.
zone. Yep.
I'll be comfortable doing it again.
Oh, I love that. So you're somebody who I've like looked up to. You've inspired and motivated me to get on my journey. So, like, how did you discover your purpose? Like, how did you know that this was what you wanted to do? Like, was it kind of what you talked about earlier when you saw somebody else that you knew commit suicide that kind of led you to your path and your purpose?
Well, and first off, I really appreciate that you say that, because I follow all the things that you do too. So that means a lot that you say that. But yeah, it's part of that, because John wasn't the first or the last person that I knew that killed himself, right? And so that was definitely a part of it. I think that, again, being a culmination of all the experiences that I'd been through, when I was a private investigator, and technically I'm still a private investigator right now, but from working as a PI in the past, I would investigate high profile, like disability, general liability stuff. And I would talk to these people that made so much money, and they seemed, at least to me, to be completely miserable. They didn't seem to have the life that one would obviously assume one would have, making
Wow.
the money that they did. So, like, that resonated with me, right? And I
Mm,
believe that when it comes to happiness, it's a balance between health and wealth and worth. And so many
mm.
people focus on the health, so many people focus on the wealth, but not a lot of people focus on the worth. And so as time went on and I started doing these things with other veterans, it it gave me a little bit of the worth
That
that I was looking
fulfillment.
for, sure. And I was
Oh,
just like,
wow.
okay, I got to keep pursuing this. I just
Keep
got to keep
feeding
going in
it.
this direction. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So you've like, it's probably more of like the connections you're making and the people's lives you're changing.
And it's not even so much to say that it's changing lives. I sincerely hope that it is in good ways, obviously, but like, to have a truly good conversation with somebody is
Mm.
invaluable. When you get to talk about your life experiences and they get to share theirs with you, and you both get to come away with a new understanding of this world that you both share. Like, how is that not worth? And so,
That is so good.
yeah, thank you. So, like, yeah, talking to so many veterans and understanding that I wasn't the only one that felt the way that I did, that really started the path for me as far as the work,
Wow.
for sure.
Oh, I love that. What are some of your core values or your beliefs? What's important to you?
I think the most important thing to me is to just be a person of good character, which
Mm,
just means not being nice to somebody because you need something, just trying to live a morally and ethically good life because it's the right thing to do. Like, having good character is always really important to me, and trust, because
mm,
I will take, from jobs that I've had in the past, if I was ever in a hiring position, for me, I would always take somebody that had a good character, good work ethic, and I could trust them over their skill set, right? In my
oh,
opinion, because and there are times where that's not going to be the case, but I feel like when you have those fundamental things in place, you can do anything. I can
mm,
teach you how to do something, but I can't teach you trust. I can't teach you to be a good person, right? So those things are always very important to me. And also just doing everything you can to not burn bridges, just because, in my opinion, for a lot of people, at least myself, I know where I want to go in life, but I'm not 100% sure how I want to get there. So if that's the case, it would be pretty destructive to burn bridges unnecessarily. You know what I mean? So again, that just kind of comes into play with having good character, trust, things like that.
Gotcha. So with your organization, the project Headspace and Timing, do you have people working with you or for you, or is it just pretty much by yourself?
So I have a board, volunteers other than myself. I'm hired by the nonprofit part-time, so I do work for the nonprofit on a part-time basis. We have a board of directors. Within that board, we have an executive board of directors. So the whole board's like 7 members, and then we have 4 members on the executive team. And then we have committees that do things out, more specific things out in public. And we have probably 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4 veterans that help us with miscellaneous committee stuff outside of that.
Wow, that's awesome. Where are we at? What is one of your biggest accomplishments or achievements, or something that you're the most proud of?
Obviously, I have to say my kids and my wife first, because if I don't, they would get mad at me, but also because I feel that way. Also,
Awesome.
mostly because I feel that way. Other than obviously my family, accomplishments and achievements, it means something different to me in that it's one thing to get an award. It's a beautiful thing to get an award. It's validating. It makes you feel good. I've received some awards from our community and other places for the things that we've done, and those things mean a lot to me. But things that mean a little bit more are some of those moments that really didn't necessarily have an award attached to it, but it gave me some sort of I guess validation, for lack of a better word, that made me feel incredibly good about myself. So case in point, when I was overseas with the military, I was an E4, and some of the guys in our platoon started referring to me as the godfather of the E4 mafia. Okay? I don't have that written in paper anywhere, but that legitimately meant a lot to me, because these guys would come into my room. They would talk to me about their problems. Sometimes when we were over there, we would work through stuff. If they had an issue with something, we could figure it out. If I needed to get something done, I would figure out ways to get things done if I needed to. Those types of things meant the world to me, because it was respect of people that I respect. And that's not to say that the awards don't mean so much, because they do. But another case in point was something that I got from your husband. So when we were overseas, Sergeant Major, who was in command of RC East or whatever, he came out to visit us, and he handed out some challenge coins, and he was just like, he gave them to the platoon sergeant. He said, give these to who you think deserve them. He handed a couple out to the squad leaders, your husband being one of them, and said, give these to who you think deserve them. And then he turned around and he walked over to me, and he gave me a challenge coin. I have it in this desk. And he gave it to me because he knew that I was an E4. I was in a team leader, sometimes acting squad leader position. And based on the responsibilities and everything that I'd been doing, he thought that I was worthy enough to have that. And with the amount of respect that I have for your husband, things like that just mean a lot, So I would say those type of things, or whenever I bring a veteran to do anything, the smile they get on their face when we first do something. And I'm not trying to go off on too many tangents.
Yeah.
We rebuilt a World War II veterans childhood canoe. And so we rebuilt this World War II veterans childhood canoe, and we made it look like his battleship in World War II. It was so awesome. We put him in the lake, Mantino Lake. This was a couple of years ago. And his family came up to me and they're like, we don't know, because he was like 96 years old. They're like, we don't know if he can paddle himself. And I looked at him and I said, hey, Ray, they said that I shouldn't let you paddle. What do you think? And he looked at me and he said, give me the damn oar. And I was like, all right, here you go. And he took off. And I saw this giant smile on his face and he's just going. And I'm like, I know that that's not like a physical award, but that makes me feel just as good, if not better,
Wow.
getting to see that kind of payoff. So I know that was a long answer to your question.
No, these are like, you even got me like emotional because like that's something I haven't even heard before. So, and some of these I have heard and I've seen them in like the newspaper and things. So, oh, they're just so good. Like, you are just so good. Oh.
Thank you.
So, what motivates and inspires you?
One big thing, honestly, is just having kids. And the reason why is because I feel like, and I'm sure you could attest to this, when you have children, you almost feel you feel a little bit of a responsibility to leave this world in a little bit better of a place than it was when you found it.
Yeah.
That's at least the duty you have to your kids, right? Because I can't control the experiences that they're going to have in their life. But if they at least know that their mother and their father, they worked very hard to make the world a little bit better of a place because they had their children in their hearts, that's definitely part of my motivation. But other than that, it sounds stupid, but it's honestly my motivation is I just really want the world to be a better place. People have asked me this before. Well, people have asked me this before, and I've talked to them about it, and it's just, you say something like that, and it's so broad, right? And it sounds so cliche, but when you really get down to the nuts and bolts of so many people that are doing so many different things, the end goal is legitimately to just make the world a better place, right? Yep. So it's just, I've always felt that's been something that I've really wanted to do. And one thing that was instilled in me, September 12th, 2001, and any other time I've seen any sort of insane hurricane, storm, whatever, you see people that don't know each other, that are different races, religions, whatever, coming together to take care of one another. Yeah. And so you see these things and you know that it's possible. You know that it's possible that we can get past a lot of the differences that we have to help one another, to take care of one another. But it seems like it's only possible when something terrible happens. So it's just, I wanted to be a part of spreading that message, just because, not because something terrible happened, but just because we all know that it makes us all feel better. It helps us all out. A rising tide raises all boats, right? Yep. So that's what motivates me, I guess.
Love that. What brings you joy or meaning? What are you passionate about? I think we kind of talked about. And what fills your own cup? Like when you start getting depleted or you exert a lot of your energy, what fills your own cup?
That is a very good question and something that I struggle with, in that I found that I was spending so much of my time worrying about everybody else and not enough time worrying about myself, which I'm sure you and me and most people our age that are out there doing something, that probably resonates with them. Mm-hmm. So I had to realize that I do need to set some boundaries. I do need to take some time to take care of myself, things that I do that help me out the most. Going to the gym has always been therapy for me. Like it is before anything else, it is therapy. Like whatever anger, frustration, anxiety, depression I have, I try to bring it to the gym and I try to leave it there. So that's one thing that helps me out. Other than that, reading a lot, because I genuinely believe that we stand on the shoulders of giants. I forget if it was Ben Franklin that said that. I'm not sure, but there's so many people before us that have done so much, that have been through so much more than we ever will. And luckily, some of them have written about it. Mm-hmm. So I would read about so many people, the experiences that they've been through, how they got through it. Those types of things really help me out when I need it. That and spending time in nature. My family has some cabins in northern Wisconsin. I brought your husband up there before.
Yeah.
When I really need to refill my cup, I will go up there because there's like no cell service, which is great. In the middle of in the middle of a beautiful forest, a gigantic lake, and it just has a presence about the place. I've been up there since I was a kid. I have so many memories up there. So just being up there, sitting on the beach with a cup of coffee, that just doing that and being in the moment, that definitely helps me kind of refill my cup, because I think that we have this hustle culture that I feel like is a little toxic sometimes.
Yeah.
So if you can understand where you are in the moment and then slow things down for a second, I think those types of things, at least for me, help me refill my cup and not get so burned out.
Yes. Oh, love that. What has helped make you successful? What has made you different from your peers? I mean, we grew up with like the same group of friends. How have you stepped out of that bubble and created this and become so successful while other ones haven't?
And that's another good question, because I believe firmly that a majority of my success and our organization's success comes from the people that are involved and the people that I've been able to surround myself with. And I always say, like, you're the, what is it they say, you're the average of like
The
four or
five people. Yep.
yeah. So the people that I spend time with, whether it's for the nonprofit or not, those people have a really big impact on my life. So it's like, I think part of the reason why I was able to kind of step out on my own was I found myself dealing with my own issues, mental health and some substance abuse and things like that. And I saw somebody that I thought was way more positive than I ever could be end up taking his own life. And when that happens and it starts making you question yourself, like, if he's capable of doing that, then anybody's capable of doing that. And I felt like there was so much pressure that had built up through all the deployments, all the decisions I made that took me away from my family. And I wasn't where I needed to be mentally. And it just pushed me to this place where I was just like, this is going to go one or two ways. Either I'm going to end up like him, or I can try to do something in his honor so nobody else ends up like that. And so you get faced with, those types of decisions, and you have to make a decision. And for the longest time, everybody always told me that it wasn't my problem, it wasn't my fault, not only for his death, but for any death. And while I understand it's not necessarily productive or constructive to say to yourself to take ownership of something that's not your fault, I couldn't stomach that, because I also believe that if we all just kind of worried about each other a little bit more, it would in turn impact us a lot better and a lot faster than if we only worried about ourselves. So it's just, you get to that point where you have to do something. You had to make a decision. And so that's where I just decided to take this and run with it. And the moment where I really decided to go for it all with a nonprofit is I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. There's so many nonprofits out there. They all do wonderful things. But I was trying to add on some tiny homes to a state-run homeless veteran facility by us. And it was going to cost so much money and take so long. And every meeting just seemed so counterproductive that after a year of doing that too, I realized I'm just going to have to do this my damn self. Like, because this is just going to be way too difficult doing it that way. So it was a culmination of those things for sure, I think, that pushed me into striking it out on our own.
Were you scared before you jumped out? And how did you get over
Terrified.
the fear? Because I feel like that's what's holding so many people back, is that they're stuck doing the same jobs that they've always done because they're scared. They're scared to take a leap. So how did you get over that fear and just say, fuck it, I'm doing it?
I don't think it's necessarily that I ever truly got over it. It's just I said to myself, what is worse? Is it worse if I just live a quiet life of regret? Or do I open my eyes and just go for it? Because I used to be terrified on roller coasters, right? When I was a kid, I'd get on a roller coaster and I'd always have my eyes shut. And I'd have my eyes shut. And because my eyes were shut, it was exponentially more terrifying to me because I didn't know what was coming. But then I realized one day I opened my eyes and I could see where I was going. And the fact that I could see where I was going made it so it wasn't as terrifying. I feel like when it comes to being afraid of making a decision, because could things go poorly? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's like right now, if you're afraid to do something, you're on the roller coaster and your eyes are closed. You don't know where you're going. You don't know what's going to happen. But if you put your best foot forward, you try to use the information at hand, you go with your gut, and you trust those people around you, then you have to go for it. Otherwise, you're gonna spend your life wondering what would have
What
happened.
could have been. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great answer. If you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give him one piece of advice, would you? And what would it be?
Join the Air Force is the first thing I think about. Join the Air Force is probably the first thing. Other than that, honestly, I wouldn't. What I would tell myself, what I would tell the 18-year-old version of myself is that you're going to go through a lot. You're going to do a lot of things that make you question who you are and what you believe in. But even in doing those things, you have to stay true to that path. You have to stay true to yourself, because I wouldn't want to give myself a heads up on anything, because that could obviously change how it went. Other than also, I would tell him to invest in Bitcoin. I would, but other than that, I would just let him know that whatever reservation, because inevitably you have those moments that nobody gets to see, where you're afraid, where you're scared, you're tired, you're by yourself, you're exhausted, frustrated, whatever. And it's about knowing that in those moments, that's still part of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to accept those things and drive on.
Oh, I love your answers. Do you have a hero?
For sure. I mean, I have so many heroes. I have heroes similar to how, Greeks had so many gods. Like I have heroes for specific things. Like my mom is a hero to me in the adversity that she faced and overcame, and how hard she worked to get over here to the United States, and to always be the type of person that's always giving to others, because I definitely got that quality from my mom. Like if she has $20 and you ask for $20, she's going to give you $20. Like that's how she is. My dad is a hero to me because of his testament to work ethic and how much he always lived in the moment. In that, one thing I never appreciated at the time, but like when I would play football, he would travel to all the games, and then after the games, he would take me aside and talk to me about what he saw throughout the whole game, which let me know that he was paying attention to me, which I didn't so much care. Like at the time, I'm just like, whatever, dad, like blah, blah, blah. But now as a parent, you're like, oh my God, you were sitting there, you were watching me, you were paying attention to every single play, so much so that you talked to me about it afterwards. Like that's a gift that I carry, and I do with my own kids and other people that I know. So he's a hero to me in that regard. But then when I look back into history, some prominent ones are like Marcus Aurelius, who was commonly touted as the philosopher king of Rome, right? Because he'd been through so many things in his life, yet he was always able to keep a very level head through stoicism. Miyamoto Musashi, he was a 16th century Ronin, so he was a samurai without a master, and he was arguably the best swordsman that ever lived in history. And he spent his entire life perfecting his two-sword style. And in doing so, he achieved enlightenment. And when he achieved enlightenment at an older age, he actually took up painting, and he took up the tea ceremony and all of these these different types of arts. And when you see some of his paintings, you can kind of see how he was also a swordsman by the way he swung the brushstroke. And he wrote a few books that was just talking about his two-sword style that one could easily take to be like a motivational type of book, because he was able to take something that he learned and apply it to so many other things in his life, to help him with so many other things in his life. So I think he was a hero for me to that regard as well.
Love it. Who's been the most influential person in your life, or who's impacted you the most, would you say?
Other than those that I'd already listed, obviously the people that you're around are going to be the most influential people to you. Um,
Mhm.
it's hard for me to be really influenced by people I don't know, just because I don't know them. Like
Mhm.
everybody in my life that pursues something different. I have a few friends that are doctors. Each one of them influences me greatly because I know how much time they put into studying to perfecting their craft to being a doctor. I mean, a lot of that kind of stuff influences me. Anybody that's doing something that they love around me influences me. And the other thing that influences me the most, I think, is also, well, are we talking about a person that influences me?
Whatever, whichever.
Yeah, I would have to stick with that then. I would have to stick with that between my parents, the people that I have around me, my wife, because obviously she's the one who sees me the most
Mhm.
often, and she is your partner has to carry whatever burden you're carrying.
Mhm.
And so for her to be there when I'm in my weaker moments to help push me and motivate me, inspire me to continue to do good things, that's obviously incredibly influential on me as well.
Oh, good. Do you have a morning routine or any habits that you do every day or rituals that have helped make you successful?
I mean, gym is my first thing. I always try to do that first thing in the morning. Even though that's not necessarily, your strongest time of the day, it is something I need to do to just kind of get my mind right for the day.
Mm.
If I have anything that would be a little stressful, like any sort of big meeting, a public speaking engagement, something like that, like I'll have to go to the gym that morning for sure, just to
Did
make
you
sure.
go to the gym this morning?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And more than that, if it's something that I'm very nervous about, another thing that I'll work into my morning routine is I'll try to do something outside. Like I'll
Mhm.
walk or I'll bike or something, just because that also kind of helps balance me out. But other than that, I mean, having kids, you can try to have a routine as much as you can. It might change a
Yep.
little bit, but as long as I have those things, that's pretty much
Oh,
the
I
majority of
didn't
it.
ask you in the beginning, so I know, but can you tell the viewers how many kids you have and what their ages are?
I have two daughters, and my oldest, her name's Lily. She's about to turn 5, and my youngest is Cece, and she just turned 2.
Ah, so you got your hands full.
Yep.
What's a common myth about like your organization, what you do, the military? Any common myth that you think you need to like clarify for people?
Well, I think there's a few. So a common myth with the military, from what I've felt, is that you were in Black Hawk Down type stuff if you were overseas,
Mhm.
and it's difficult being a veteran, in my opinion, because it's such a wide net that you're casting on so many people. Individual experiences may vary. You have the people that are special forces, that are whatever they are, and they did crazy movie type stuff. You have people that didn't do those things, but they still serve their country, so that's fine. And then you have people like me. In my opinion, I'm in the middle, just because I was a grunt. I was infantry. We saw some things, but again, like our firefights were pretty short in nature. They weren't anything like super theatrical. We were very lucky that we didn't lose anybody when we were gone. So our experience was different. But, you know, any of the cliche things that come out about veterans, I would say that those are myths, not 100% of the time, because they do apply to some veterans. It's just not fair to apply that to all veterans. Like some veterans might be scared of fireworks, some don't care, some might want to talk about their service, some might not. So, I mean, to put any sort of blanket statement to encompass all veterans, to me, is a bit of a myth, because
Mm.
it's a very diverse group. And then as a nonprofit, I think one of the myths with that is that we only care about veterans, because
Mm.
while I do care very much about veterans, one of the underserved demographics when it comes to what we're doing is also the people in that veteran's life. Because what I've found is that in certain situations, if you have a veteran that's really struggling with whatever they're struggling with, and they have one primary person in their life that is trying to be that rock, that can be exhausting. And
Oh,
sometimes they need help too, because they've been carrying this person's burden for so long, and then it turns into resentment and turns into all
mm,
these other things that never get addressed. And if I'm only focusing on the veteran, well, then I'm missing out, because I'm not focusing on these other people that also need some sort of help. And luckily, there's some organizations that we partnered with, like Buddy Check 22, who they will give free therapy to anyone in a veteran's life, a veteran or anyone in their life. They will just do free therapy sessions. Like, organizations like that are out there to help combat those types of things. So I
wow.
definitely think, that's another myth that I think I don't necessarily agree with.
Oh, good. How has coronavirus affected anything that you do or your organization?
Oh my God, yeah, that was a game. Like, so when in 2019, 2020, my goal, which is still a goal, but my main goal was a transitional tiny home lodging facility for homeless veterans.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, that's why I was going through the thing with the state. We were trying to add on to their thing. That wasn't going to work. So I was going to do my own thing. I went up to District 214 in Arlington Heights. Shout out to their teacher, Jeff Bott. They have an engineering class, and they designed the tiny homes for me, and they were all under the supervision of like an engineering company. So like, they had to work hard to design these models, and we were looking at land, everything like that. And then COVID happened, and when COVID happened, I started getting or veteran family members or friends reaching out to me, um, because of mental health issues, because they
Mm,
had to do everything virtually. While there's nothing wrong with doing things virtually, sometimes when it comes to something as vulnerable as talking about your mental health, sometimes you'd rather be face to face for that, right? So
yeah.
it's like, I was seeing more veterans killing themselves. I was seeing way more have issues. And then the VA, they were getting very backed up. And then community care, which, if you're not familiar,
Mm,
is another avenue of approach for people that are looking to get help through the VA, but the VA is too backed up. Community care was kind of backed up. And it made us completely reevaluate our main priority. And so from that point, we took the transitional tiny home lodging facility, we put that back a little bit because we're still focused on that. But right now, our goal is veteran mental health, which we are tackling through our veteran advocacy program, which is something
mm,
that we're working on with our local hospitals, police departments, and any other first responder, to try to get a veteran advocate connected with any veteran that's dealing with any kind of crisis as early on into the process as possible. So, yeah, COVID absolutely changed that.
wow. How do you define success?
That's a very hard word to define to me, just because I think success is different depending on what your goals are, right?
Mm,
And it's hard to measure depending on what your goals are. But I think that when you are respected by your peers, then
mm,
you could definitely say that you've been successful. And
wow.
when you are respected by those that you respect very much, then you know that you are respectful. Or you are successful. So we're granted, we've had some amazing opportunities to do things on national television, which I am so appreciative of, but I still feel very much like we're a pretty small nonprofit, which we are.
Mhm.
And I get invited to opportunities to talk with CEOs of very large nonprofits, and they're very nice to me. And I just feel so strange about it all, because I'm just like, I have so much respect for these guys. They've been doing this stuff for so long. There's an organization called Road Home out of Rush. They have a whole floor up at Rush. They do a phenomenal IOP, and a bunch of other services for veterans up there. And the CEO's name is Will Beiersdorf. And he reaches out to me to ask me if I need help with stuff or what we can talk about if I have questions. And I just feel like I'm bothering him, because I feel like I'm trying to play basketball with Michael Jordan. And I am some I'm in third grade and I'm just learning how to dribble and I'm trying to, you know what I mean? I feel like we're not on the same level. So the fact that I am able to talk to people like that show me some respect, I definitely think that has to signify some sort of success.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
Mm.
Um, so you kind of talked about this, like, so how do you develop yourself? You said you read. Do you watch YouTube videos or listen to podcasts, or how do you like get your ideas, or how do you like develop yourself?
Yeah, I do all of those things. I love reading. I love audiobooks. I love podcasting. I love YouTube. Anything to gain and retain knowledge, I'm a huge fan of. It just kind of depends on how I'm feeling that day. But yeah, like TED Talks. I've watched a bunch of miscellaneous TED Talks on things. Yeah, all of those would be ways that I develop myself, and meeting new people and having conversations with them, obviously.
That leads to my very next question. So when you meet new people, what do you think is important to like how you communicate with somebody new that you're meeting for like the first time?
Things that I think are very important when meeting somebody are being considerate and being a good listener, um, communicating effectively and efficiently. In that, I've always looked at brevity as a sign of intelligence. And while I go off on tangents, for sure, when it comes to other people that are talking, when you can clearly say what you want to say in as few words as possible, that's efficient, that's effective communication. When you start talking too long and you know that you're losing people and you're just going off on whatever tangent you're going off on and you're using too many words to communicate a fairly simple idea, I think you can lose people doing that. So I always try to be clear, concise, considerate, a good listener, because I think you get more out of conversations from listening than you do talking, really, right? Those are the most important things, I think, to me when it comes to talking to someone, and being genuine, because it comes to like our generation, and not just our generation, but and I don't mean to use this in such a negative light, but it's like the old used car salesman mentality where somebody's trying to sell you something. I'm saying old because I'm not saying anything terrible about car salesmen today, but I'm just saying, like, people can pick up on that now. I feel like,
I think so too.
Yeah, like a little bit more than before, where it's just like, if you're genuine and you're not right, I would rather talk to you than if you're disingenuous and you're definitely way off base. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But yeah.
How do you balance your personal life, like your home life with your wife, your kids, and working and the project headspace and timing? Like, how do you balance it all?
I have no idea. I think that, yin and yang, like my wife is organization. That is my wife. And I am chaos. And that's okay, because I'm working on that, on balancing things out. Like I said earlier, that's something that I've had a problem with, is really balancing things out, as far as like my personal time and time with my family. But some things that I have done to help balance things out is I use calendars, I use notepads. One thing that I was taught by a former boss of mine, Rob Smith, over at Certapro Painters of Kankakee and Homewood, he gave me a notebook, and he just told me to write down all my priorities for the day and then number them like 1 through 5, as far as like, if they're important, 1, if they're not so important, 2, and like do things like that. So thanks to him doing that, using calendars, some of the techniques that my wife has given me because of her organizational skills, like that's helped me keep balance a little bit more. But that's definitely one of my weaknesses that I need to improve on, because I feel like I'm usually running every which way at any points in time. And I know that things are going to slip through the cracks because of that. So that's definitely something I need to work on.
But I think that's great hearing it because I think that's something we all kind of struggle with, is trying to balance, like if you're working and family and you want to be creative and do other things. So I think it's a legit question that a lot of people can benefit hearing from you.
Well,
Um,
we have this, like I was alluding to earlier, this hustle culture, this hustle mentality, which
yes.
I understand from a production standpoint, like this is what's needed to get the things done that need to get done. But my question is like, at what cost? Because we have these cell phones that turn into little anxiety devices. Like I was literally with a friend of mine yesterday with a couple of friends, and we were just having a beer, and one of them turned her phone off, and she just said, I just don't even want to deal with it, was what she said. And I was like, I totally understand that. We have this culture where you're expected to be available all
Mm-hmm.
day, every day, all night, whatever. And depending on the other things that you have going on and who you work for, that's it makes it exponentially more difficult to balance things out in your life when you don't even know what that means for your own schedule. So yeah,
Right.
I'm sure some other people have that problem too.
What do you try to teach your kids? What do you think is important for them to learn from you?
I would say I work very diligently to make sure that my kids have the tools to know how to think, not what to think,
Ooh,
because they may disagree with me on plenty of things, which is totally fine. But it's just, I don't want them to fall victim to just always hijacking somebody else's opinion, idea, whatever. I want them to be able to think about things on their own. And so like you have those moments with your kids that you take, that mental snapshot, like when they first take their first few steps, they first say your name, they first say they love you. One of those moments for both of my kids was when they first told me that they had an idea. Like when my oldest was 3, we were sitting on the couch downstairs, and she looked at me and she said, Daddy, I have an idea. And like I just looked at her and I almost started tearing up because I was so happy. Because that means that I felt like that means I'm doing an okay job as a dad, because my daughter, she finally had an idea. It's her idea. It might be silly and zany and whatever, but then I would talk to her about it, And my youngest is 2, and so she doesn't communicate as well, but she'll say idea, idea, and then she'll run away and go do something. And that makes me so happy because I just want to make sure that they're independently thinking, So that's my most
oh,
important thing. All
I
the other things
love
are
that.
details. Right.
That
And I
is
mean,
so
everything else
good.
is small details, but that's for sure the most important.
Oh, I really, really, really like that. How do you want your kids to remember you?
I want my kids to remember all of the times where they asked me to do something and I did. And what I mean by that is just like from what my dad taught me from going through all of my plays at a football game, like I always try to take a minute and be in the moment, regardless of where I'm at. So if my kids say to me, hey, can you read me a book right now? You know what that's like. You're tired, you're in the middle of a bunch of things, whatever. There were times where I wouldn't do that. And then I realized, well, so many parents always say it goes by so fast. And it's
Mm.
true, you're watching it happen before your eyes. And I think part of that is by skipping those moments. So when my kids say, hey, Daddy, can you read to me? I'm like, okay. And like, I'll take a second. Or will I go play with them? Will I build a fort with them? When I drop them off at daycare or preschool and they say, Daddy, can we finish this song? That's only a minute, right? But if you weren't thinking about it, you would say, hey, we're at preschool, we got to go. But then I realized, like, what's more important to me? And so we'll sit in the car and we'll finish the song. And so I hope that they remember those moments, that I wasn't just
Mm.
trying to rush through these times with them.
Oh, I really like that's deep. That's really good. Like being in the moment.
Right.
Like I need to work on that myself. Like
Everybody does. You
that's
know,
good. That's really good. Um, if you were to die tomorrow, would you be happy with your life and how you lived it? And what do you think makes a good life?
I would be happy in that I do feel like I have tried to make a difference. I do feel like it's come from a very good, genuine place. So I feel like that would make me happy. Um, and then as far as, I'm sorry, the
A
other part
good
was
life.
what
What
makes a
do
good
you
life.
think makes a good life?
Well, and that's a very difficult, deep question too, because that's very dependent on who you are as a person, right? I just think that to live a good life means that you had a positive enough of an impact on those around you that after you're gone, your memory will live on through them.
Mm.
Your the things that you wanted to do, the type of person you are, the character that will live on through them. Because I heard it before. I think it was through a movie or something. I can't remember, but it was a great quote, and it was something along the lines of, "You die twice in this world. You die once when the last breath leaves your body, and then you die a second time when the last person that ever knew you says your name for the last time." Right? I
Oh,
heard that and I was like, that's a beautiful thing,
that
because
is.
the veterans that I've lost in my life, I carry their thoughts with me when I do something for someone else, because I know that's how I can keep them alive, because they're still alive there. So I would say that that leaving that type of impact would definitely, regardless of how many people it is, if you only do that for one person and they remember you in that way after you're gone, I think that that means you lived a good life.
Oh, good, good, good. Let's see. How do you want people in general to remember you? Or what would, if you did die and you had your funeral, what would you want people saying at your funeral about you?
I would want them to recall how, probably my sense of humor, honestly, especially in a situation like that, because I think my sense of humor is one of the principles that's gotten me through everything that I've ever been through. You
Mm,
have to be able to laugh. You have to learn to not take yourself seriously, because when you're put in certain situations, especially overseas, and you realize how fine that line is between life and death, then you realize that you have to be able to enjoy the time that you're here, and you have to be able to laugh. So I
mm.
would hope that when I'm gone, people would recall those moments, the pranks I played on my wife, the silly, goofy stuff that I've done with other people. Like I hope they would remember those kind of things. I hope that's how I would be remembered. Yeah.
Oh, love it. What are you most thankful and grateful for in your own life?
Other than, and again, obviously, health of like my family, it's always the most, it's always what I'm most thankful and grateful for. My oldest had respiratory issues when she was young, and we had to spend time in the hospital and all this other type of stuff, and it's just, you have to be so thankful and grateful for that. And being thankful and grateful is very difficult, because we have a tendency to forget what we really should be thankful and grateful for, in
Mm.
that we have all of this stuff around us all the time. I have a fridge with food in it and a roof over my head and clothes. I should be super thankful for that, but might not necessarily think about it because I'm so used to it. But I mean, obviously, those tenets of just living in a society, I'm extremely thankful for. I'm extremely thankful that I live in this country, regardless of the issues that there are, and the differences that some people may have and how they take it up with one another. Regardless of that, being to other countries, I am so thankful that I'm in America, and then I'm incredibly thankful and grateful that I have the support system that I have, from my wife to my friends and family to the city of Mantino, the village of Mantino, to everybody in Kankakee County outward. I am so incredibly thankful to have that. My board of directors, they're phenomenal. Just everybody that I get to surround myself with. I am just so thankful that those are the people in my life.
Oh, so good. So what's next for you? Where do you see yourself, your business going? Do you have a current goal you're working on? What is next for Eric and Project Headspace and timing?
So, the biggest goal right now is our veteran advocacy program. So, I'm working with some other organizations in town where we're going to develop an app, essentially. So, like,
Oh,
if you were a police officer, you responded to a call, and you think that you could use a veteran advocate there, then you can actually put a page out where a volunteer veteran advocate would respond. That volunteer veteran advocate has to be a veteran and would go through mental health and first aid training. And they'd also be educated in all the resources that there are in this area, because we're not trying to push anything on anyone else. We're just trying to be that person to let them know, hey, I've been where you are. And if you want some help, I can help you, regardless of what that means. So getting the advocacy program going is such a beautiful idea in theory, but then obviously in the real world now, I'm dealing with like the legal side of things, making sure legally everything is good, because we're dealing with hospitals, healthcare, everything like that, insurance, training. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I'm very excited about it because I genuinely believe it'll be a great program. I would hope. I have no inclination really to take it outside of Illinois, in that it just gives me a lot of anxiety to think of what that would even look like. But I would love to create it in a way that it could be replicated by other organizations and companies where they could take it and they could do it not just for veterans, but any demographic of people, like women dealing with postpartum depression. Okay. Children that were victims of child abuse. Like if you could create an advocate program that could be replicated to connect people with other people that have been through similar things, that would be incredible. So that's definitely a huge goal for me. In adjacency to the veteran village, still a huge goal. I will build a transitional tiny home lodging facility for homeless veterans one day. So I say those are definitely some of my biggest goals. And also, I want to teach my daughter how to ride a bike this year. So that's another big goal.
Oh, very good. And then what are some of your, so last question.
Yep.
What are some of your biggest tips you could give to other people, other veterans, some of your peers that they could take from you to live a better life, to become successful, to kind of like break away or get out of their fear zones? What tips or advice could you give anybody who watches this?
It's one important tip that I would give to everybody is I really feel like a lot of us just need to understand what it means to love unconditionally, because context means so much. And in the world that we live in, with social media and all of these very quick bites of things and quick clips and quick sentences and quotes and whatever, context is missed and conditions are forgotten about. And I feel like when you look at the core of a person and you just understand that you should love one another unconditionally, I think it will make things exponentially easier for you in the future from a stress perspective. But in addition to that, my biggest thing would be to rely on those around you, to rely on those that have been through way worse things than you've ever been through and wrote about it in a book, and just understand that you're not alone. I think so many people are so fixated on this idea that they're alone. And what they don't understand is you choose that. And I'm not saying that you're wrong for doing it at all. I'm just saying I think that's part of your default, is to choose to kind of be alone. And if I could just give you one quick story here.
Yeah, sure.
When I do the advocacy stuff, I do a lot of one-on-one things with veterans, right? And without getting into any details, I dealt with a veteran who had been through some significant substance abuse issues, and the substance abuse issues had permeated through his life and affected essentially everything else in his life. And he felt so alone. And so we're at this diner and we're talking, we're having a great conversation. This other veteran comes in that I've worked with on things. He's been through the same things. And he bends over and he just says, "Hey, what's going on, man?" He says, "Hey" to me. I introduce him to the other veteran I'm talking to. And he just looks at him. He says, "Hey, Pete's a great dude. You'll love him, blah, blah, blah." And then he goes and he leaves and has breakfast with his family, or who he was there with. Now, that veteran that I was there talking with went on to tell me his entire story and how alone that he felt. And I said to him, "Do you know that veteran that just walked up to us at the beginning of our conversation and said, 'Hey,' and introduced himself to us?" And he said, "Yeah." And I go, "This is what he'd been through." And he'd been through almost the exact same things as that veteran that I was eating with. And he was sitting 2 tables away from us at a diner on a random Tuesday. And so I said, so how alone do you really think you are? And he like looked at me and he just was speechless for a second, because I told him that if you can push past the vulnerability and reach out for some help, you will be amazed by how many people are dealing with something just like what you're dealing with. And sometimes just knowing that you're not alone is enough for some people.
Yeah. So good. So good. So I think that's everything. I feel like people who didn't know you before maybe know a little bit more about you now. I think if they want to find you on Facebook, do you want to put your any of your links or anything out there for the world, or?
Yeah. So you can follow Project Headspace and Timing on Facebook, LinkedIn. We also have a website, projectheadspaceandtiming.org. You can follow me. I just have a Facebook, and that is e.w.peterson. And those would probably be the best ways. Or if you have any questions, you can email me at ericp@projectheadspaceandtiming.org.
Thank you. And I would suggest everybody friend request you on Facebook, because you are so funny. The stuff that you post, like if I'm ever like having a crappy day and I see something you post, like it immediately like lifts my mood. So I love the stuff you post.
Thank you very much.
So I'm so thankful and grateful that you did this with me. I love that of all the interviews I've done so far, like I know you and I've known you for a while, and
Right.
just seeing like how you were before, more quiet, reserved, and just how you are now, I'm so proud of you, and just like what you've achieved, what you accomplished, like just the things you're doing. It's like inspired me to do my own thing. So I always thought like, man, Eric, like he knows his purpose, he knows what he's doing in life. Like I want to be like him. So I feel like, even little things like you don't even know the people you're impacting and having an influence on. So just keep being you. Like I just love like the person you are, your aura, everything about you. I just thank you very much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm so thankful that you're letting me post this to YouTube and hopefully get like your story out there to the world for others who, might need support and who are other veterans. So I really, really appreciate this. And I'm very thankful that you did this with me today.
I I don't know what I really, really appreciate all those kind words. That was just to hear things like that from a selfish perspective. Obviously it's validating. It's very nice to hear those types of things, but from a realistic perspective, when I have my moments of doubt, it's nice to be able to recall moments like this where, it reminds me that I'm doing the right thing. So thank you for saying all that. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. I didn't say fuck once. The whole thing. Very proud of myself for that too. And I love everything that you're doing too. And so just thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thank you. So we'll be posting it probably this weekend. Probably on Saturday I'll post it. So stay
Awesome.
tuned.
Sounds good. Will do.
All right. All right, Eric. Thank you.
You're welcome. See you later.
Bye.